section of the conference, which is called the Ludic Interfaces, with the subtitle Ludic Interfaces, what's that? Because we are not completely sure of what it is, but we're trying to navigate in a field which seems to become a new discipline, and there are many notions of the ludic and of ludicity, ludology running around, and we are starting development process, all of us currently, to establish something like a master's program, which will be called a European Masters in Ludic Interfaces. But apart from this aspect, we are interested in exploring this as a possible new discipline. I think one of the first ones who mentioned this notion of ludic interfaces was Gunalan at ISEA 2008 in Singapore, when he thought that there must be something coming up which he identified as very playful as opposed to old conventional interfaces. Old conventional interfaces like the keyboard of this computer or the mouse are not extremely playful. You press the button, something happens, but there's not much fun involved. But many of the new interfaces like the Wii Remote, but also many other things that we will come across during the next few minutes have this new ludic and playful quality, and we want to discuss this from different angles, from a philosophical angle, from a historical angle, from an artist's perspective, and also from a media theoretical perspective. So I want to briefly introduce the panel to you. There is Georg Russecker from Vienna, active at the Kunstuniversität Linz, the art university in Linz. We have Michael Liebe and Stefan Günzel from Potsdam in Germany, from the University of Potsdam, and they work together on aspects of philosophy of games, but also on games studies related topics. Our guest from Valencia in Spain is Moises Mañas, who also made this wonderful PowerPoint show during the last 5 minutes. And we've got Tapio Mäkelä from Helsinki, who is also a research fellow at the University of Salford here in Manchester. Tapio works a lot into locative games and mobile games and artists' applications with mobile technology. And last not least, Margarete Jahrmann from Vienna, also active and working at the University of Arts in Zurich. And Margarete is an artist who worked a lot in fields that we try to describe as ludic interfaces. I think what we should do maybe is to give each of you 10 minutes to just describe what your viewpoint of this notion is, or of this emerging field, and then we will try to have a discussion where we critically assess this notion and maybe come across problems and possibilities of this field. I just flick very quickly through a lot of images from things which we think might be called ludic interfaces, and then we'll give you a deeper insight later on.
Can you just let it run?
Yeah, okay, by pressing the button. Georg, do you want to start? You're from the Interfaces Cultures Department at the University of Linz.
Right, hi. Thank you for having us here.
Can I? It's a sliding switch. Do you want to? This drum seems to be working better.
Okay, hi. Yeah, it's working now. Okay, thanks for having us. Like Matthias already said, I'm from the Interface Cultures Department. It's in Linz. It's actually the University of Arts and Industrial Design, which maybe already brings a little bit in the applied arts element in this kind of thing. Yeah, what I want to do is, or actually what we communicated ourselves is we are not so much talking about structures, because like Matthias said, we are kind of a development team of a new master course, and for sure for us, so there are many questions, especially like what is ludic, what is interface, And yeah, I think what I want to point out from my perspective is we in Linz, and especially I'm more interested in methods of play, which is maybe a little bit different to the notion of entertainment or game in this sense. And the ability profile, so to say, of playfulness is somehow connected to two things. What I want to point out, first of all, theoretically, which is a kind of transdisciplinary approach, which doesn't mean that somehow play, in a sense, is not only a method which you can apply in a game or which you can apply in something with a playful environment. You can somehow make a play out of everything if you want to. And there are two paradigms. The one is the hacker paradigm, which is to overcome limitations, and the one is the innovation paradigm, which is using existing resources in new ways. And this kind of combination, when we look into kind of technical or let's say media-morph interfaces, we have somehow a kind of implemented limitation, or it's sometimes based on a company idea, it's based on an idea of a socio-technological issue, but this kind of limitations in this sense can be used in a very creative and this way very artistic or let's say playful way. This is actually not an example.
Do you want me to go to a certain image?
Yeah, maybe I want to show, for example, the massage piece or the Headbang Hero piece, which is, yeah, this was it. This is a student work from the Interface Culture Department, which you can see it's actually a jacket where you can do massage to the player you are playing the game. It's connected to a Tekken game on a Sony environment. So what you actually do is you play Tekken on the back of your partner. So it means the positive side effect of it is that you get a quite well massage. And another one would be, this is the next picture, would be Headbang Hero in the other direction. Thank you very much. Headbang Hero is as well taking this kind of acceleration model from the Wii. And what you're doing is you're having a wig, and what you can do is you can headbang to different songs, and the whole controller is based on doing this. And as well, there is a kind of, let's say, scientific perspective in it, because it's kind of measuring how many dead brain cells you have established, and this is somehow the score you can get. So we see there is a very constructive side, and there maybe these two examples show this constructive or blackish or whitish issue of what the playful interface might be. For sure, these are just examples. I think there are many, many different methods out there where people using playfulness as a kind of ability profile to explore new perspectives in dealing with art, science, technology. And now we come to the interpretation or idea of interface, which in my sense is not so much a kind of frame set or systematical order. It's more or less something where things are going from one form into another. So we have kind of a intersectional idea of interface. So the combination or on the gap or on the border between, let's say, easy example because it's discussed so much is art and science. I think the most rich ideas are coming out from this kind of very close to the border, not too much into art, not too much into science, because there the definitions are the softest somehow, and you can maybe to be most experimental. How much time? Is it done?
Another 2-3 minutes.
2-3 minutes, all right. Yeah, a little bit about context myself is I'm doing a festival together with SuperNet, which is called Coded Cultures. We have somehow the same issues as well. I think Ludic Interfaces is now trying to bring this together as a master course, and for sure always keep in mind we are like 4 different perspectives, so it's or at least associate partners, we are 6 different perspectives. This means a lot of discussion, a lot of definition, a lot of playing for ourselves as well. And yeah, that's it so far. Maybe we can elaborate on some things I said in the discussion. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you, Georg. Shall we move from Linz in Austria to Potsdam in Germany and see what the Potsdam team has to say?
Yeah, hi. I'm Stefan, and together with Michael, I'm from the Digital Games Research Center. It's a game research network at the University of Potsdam that's investigating into computer games or digital games in general. And we are coming from the media theory side and also from the philosophical side and reflecting game structures as well as what games are in general or in total. So the first question that's coming up for us is, what is the ludic? And in order to give an answer to that, we have to think about another difference, and this difference is the one between game and play. It's the richness of the English language that you have these two terms which don't exist in German. We also only have the word Spiel, but the game-play difference is very essential in order to understand games, or the ludic. Because game, on the one side, refers to the set of rules, like in a chess game, for example, where you have the possibility of certain moves you can take in a chess game, whereas the play is the actualization of rules, and that means the actual game you play, and so it's a performance of the play in accordance, that's important, to this given set of rules. And this is where the term of the magic circle comes in, so please go to the Raucherzone now. I don't know if you have that here. I think you only have this glass boxes in order to smoke. No, that's too far away.
The glass boxes, okay.
Yeah, that was it. Stop. Back. Yeah, go. Yeah, that's it. Do you know that? So this is a designated smoking area. We have that in Germany. So we don't force people into glass cubes. They are allowed to step inside a circle. Oh, this is a square, but it's what we could call a magic circle, because a magic circle is the same what happens in a game, because you subject yourself to a given system of rules, or to one rule, like in this case you're only allowed to smoke here, and this establishes a difference between game and non-game. So your performative behavior establishes the game or brings game into being. And this term of the magic circle is a classical topic or classical concept from cultural anthropology. Johan Huizinga, a Dutch anthropologist, introduced this term in the 1930s, and it became very important in computer game research, even though the term itself doesn't apply to computer games anymore, because what computer games do is actually they set the magic circle out of function, because it is not magic anymore. The magic comes in due to the player who plays, who accepts the rules. But what you do when you play a computer is you don't have to accept the rules in order for them to be in function. So even without understanding rules, you could actually play a computer game because the computer as a system forces you, or the program as a system forces you to obey the rules. So it's a set of rules without playfulness or without magic. So the situation changes totally, and this is why it becomes interesting also for reflections on the ludic or on the game. Because if we say, well, the game is not what it used to be because people don't have to agree on the set of rules anymore, then what is the new thing, and what could be the ludic or the playfulness of games? And the new thing is what comes in with things like cheating or modification. So in order to play, not play the game, but what you do actually when you really play or be ludic, have a ludic attitude toward computers, is you modify the game structure itself. So this is what happens, or is a great dynamic in computer games, for example, the modification of, let's say, Half-Life into Counter-Strike. So this was a play with the game instead of playing a game, and this turned out to be give a rise to new games. So we could say that the ludic itself is reintroduced into the digital realm by playing with software structures or with game structures. So, and this is, I think, the main point where we should say that what used to be the play now becomes something different and could be called now the ludic. And just the last remark, where this ludic spreads out is, on one example, is a migration of forms or interactive tropes, as Ian Bogus, an American Atlanta-based game philosopher, calls them. That is, for example, a migration of form from regular computer programs into games. For example, the scroll bars that migrate from word editing software into computer games, SimCity, where you scroll the map in order to act on the environment. And also on the other way around, that computer game graphical interface structures enter the non-game realm. For example, in social networks, we have a lot of game-like applications. So this is one example where we have this spread out or migration of ludic forms, as we can call them. And there's also a general expansion, and there's a backside and maybe also a dark side of the whole process. This is the becoming of ludicity or playfulness of everyday applications in jobs, for example. So, or in what people do when they mess around with stock markets. They actually play computer games because they push a button when a certain degree or a certain amount of money is reached, and then what they actually do is they play with an interface and use it as in this zone of playing. Well, this is just a perspective where the ludic became somehow total or re-entered society without being called a game or without being called ludic. Okay, that's from my side. So Michael's now about to jump on my back and enter some, more.
Yeah, just a couple of remarks. Because what Stefan already mentioned with the dark side, so there's always, everything we're talking about is sort of two-folded. So there's, say, the physical interface and the graphical interface in a computer game, for example. But there's also, make it more ambivalent, play is at the same time, it's like a waste of time, you're just enjoying yourself, but at the same time, it allows you to behave in a quite productive manner. Use sports, for example. If you play a football game, you move your body, but at the same time aren't producing anything in the true sense, in the original sense, but you're sticking to the rules, and that enables not only you to play this game, but for 22 people to play the game of soccer. So there's a productive side, both to the action of play, but also an unproductive side to the action of play, and the same with the rule set. So, like in this situation, you are quiet at the moment while I'm talking, and also nobody here disturbs me, so that's sort of an implicit rule of how to behave, and that allows us to have a sort of more effective communication. So limitations at the same time always are restrictive and productive. And the notion of the ludic then would be also both an attribute but also an attitude. So you have to have a ludic approach to use stuff from your personal mentality, but at the same time an interface can be designed as according to ludic affordances, and then implicitly invites you to play with it. But if you are not having this ludic approach to using stuff, then it also is a waste of design effort. Same. So yeah, that's just to add a few keywords. Also, you can experience some stuff we are doing sometimes is the Amaze Festival. It's a game art festival we do sometimes in different locations around the world. I won't throw it, it's a bit dangerous, but you can be fair and pass some on to the back rows if you want to. So, no. Matthias, please. Thank you. So that's some catalogs of the festival. Thank you. Whose turn is it next?
I think if I can say a few words, I wanted to give you a few more quick examples of interfaces that one could describe as ludic. This is an installation by two Finnish artists, Andy Bests and Merja Pustin, and it was shown in Manchester, I think 2 years ago, in a festival in the streets. It is on one hand an art piece where by jumping on certain sections of this inflatable castle, you can trigger sounds and you would create something like a soundscape. But it's at the same time, of course, a child's play environment. And I want to show you this example to question or to criticize one notion of this theoretician whom Stefan Günzel already mentioned, Jan Huizinga, who wrote Homo Ludens, this book in 1938. And what Huizinga was of the opinion of was that he said that das Spiel ist etwas außerhalb des gewöhnlichen Lebensstehens. Play is something which is extra the walls of ordinary life. And with many of these ludic interfaces that we see today, there is a mix-up of daily life and of the magic area of the game. So it is not quite clear in this regard, is this an art piece or is this ordinary life just entertainment? And many artists use this kind of subversive breaking the boundaries down to, on one hand, question Huizinga's notion of this separation of ordinary life and the special situation of the game, and by also being more effective and maybe by reaching other target audiences than the ones that you would usually reach in a museum. This is another piece which is also a comment on one of the key notions that traditional games theory had. Roger Caillois, who wrote his Man and Play in 1958, 20 years after Huizinga, said that one of the each game contains one of these four ingredients. Agon, that would be competition. Alea, that would be chance. Ilix, that would be vertigo. Mimicry, that would be simulation or imitating something. And this is a game which does the opposite of competition. It does not encourage the players to work very hard, concentrate, be fast, react on situations, but it measures your brain activities, and it says the more relaxed you are and the less competitive you are, the better you play in the game. So the more points you get. So in the end, by forgetting about the game completely and just thinking of something else, you could win the game. So this is also a ludic approach to a classical game concept. Another example would be this piece, which is called Sweet Pet by France Cadet. She controls one of the ultra-hard, masculine, competitive first-person shooters by having people to caress a soft black bowl and to sit on these fluffy carpets on the table. And again, she perverts the situation or subverts it by saying, the softer you are, the better you are in this first-person shooter. So she makes a critical comment on competition and also about male gaming behavior. This is another shot from how you have to play this first-person shooter. And there are other artists, the group Fur, for example, who take a completely different approach to this bodily experience than France Cadet. For France Cadet, it is kind of bringing back haptic experience, softness, sensitivity, tolerance. But Fur takes the hard points of gaming and emphasizes them and overemphasizes them to some amount. So one of their games is a football computer game modification, where they modified a FIFA game where you would have to play against another football team in such a way that whenever you play badly and your opponent is better than you, it kicks you on your shin bone in your real life. So they have constructed an apparatus which you have to mount to your shin bone. And when you make a mistake, then you get another blue bruise on your shin bone. So it is a super aggressive game, more aggressive than the FIFA game. And there is an Italian theoretician, Alessandro Ludovico, who says that in this area of ludic interfaces, there is something like a macho, boyish version of ludic interfaces, and there is a feminist version of ludic interfaces. So I think that also shows that there, with such a new notion, there are often key questions really, coming up which were also relevant for other media. So gender issues, for example, or ethnic issues. Okay, these were just a few thoughts to this notion of ludic interfaces, which are sometimes also called haptic interfaces. And I would like to hand over to Moises from Valencia.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to try to do something really fast presentation. And in the same time, I want to ask you something. How many people speak Spanish here? Okay, one person. how many, two persons, sorry. How many people knows what is ludic interfaces? Nobody. It's more or less we are in the same time, you know? It's in the same number. That is the problem, you know? Always we are thinking like, okay, we know what we are. We know what the things are, you know? But I think the most important thing is to think about what we want to do, you know, with this relation. Because for me, I think the ludic interface is not the idea of the users. It's the idea of developed relations. It's different, I think, in my point of view. And how many people think ludic interface have to be democratic? Nobody. Okay, we are inside of the dictator of interfaces. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 It's not democratic too. Okay, I think it's really simple. My idea about that is because sometimes we think about ludic. It means entertainment, you know. In Spain, it's you say entertainment. In fine art faculty, they kill you, you know. But here, you are more maybe like, okay, I can understand more or less what it means entertainment because it's a English word, and for us, it's entretenimiento. It means money, and it means no culture, you know, in Spanish way. But it's not the correct situation, no, it's not the correct point of view, you know. And I think, in my point of view, it's a fine arts background. You know, it's a really fine arts background with computer science, some courses and something like that. But the most important thing is to think about the whole experience, the art and action, to try to understand what it means games. But the most important thing is to try to understand, for me, is ludic interface is light, it's space, and it's technique in the same time. But it has to be transparent, really transparent. It means democratic, in my point of view, you know? Mm-hmm. It means ludic interface as a freedom. In the same time, ludic interface is inspiration. Because inspiration is freedom and it's ludic. When you are happy, you feel like okay, I can do it, you know. And when you are not happy, you know, you can do it too, you know, because you have to do it, you know. It's the different. But the relationship between that experience is always transparent, and I mean that is for me that is interesting, you know, in this kind of relations. Don't forget the history of art, please. Okay?
Moises, could I just ask you whether you could be so kind and say a few words?
Yes, there's some words from our students. This is it's a game that is a really strange Chinese bowl. You know, I don't know the name in English of that, and I don't know the name in English and Spanish of that. It is you can move with the bowl, and you can use marble mat.
Marble mat.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Okay, and you can play with the 3D dimensional graphic interface that is like you have a ball and you have holes and something like that. It's really simple. But look at that. Is the white box was only for security because it's a really prototype and the people cannot use it. You know. It's impossible to use without that white box. Okay, if you want, I can show you another one. And this is it's an interesting project. It's called. It's like a Rockola. It's Red Ola. It's work with 20 cents, and it's music that is connected with internet. And it's surfing in the internet with the words of the music, you know. And this is another more like a sculptural and experimental interface about. This is one kind of sculpture that is magnet sculpture that you can build in different point of view. It's already kinetic, you know. and in the same time is showing you the difference between words and between sentences in Spanish. You know, it's more or less like a syntactic machine, you know, but it's really phonetic, you know. Let's play that. And I think it's and one more and it's finished. And this is one of the things that is more interesting in one of our point of view. This is electronic sculptures of freedom electronic sculptures. You know, it's a solar electronic sculpture that the student only have the wire and they have the components and they have to do. It's like a kids, you know. It's like they have to do whatever they want with the space and with the light, with the technique. You know, this is the idea more or less of to work in that way. And it's so interesting because most of our students come from fine arts background, you know. They don't have a computer science background, and they can understand more easier that than to try to explain or to try to speak about the Ludic interface, you know? More or less, you know. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Moises. Tapio, do you want me to go to a certain slide, or do you want to direct yourself?
Maybe you can go to that one. Yeah, thanks. I wanted to start by pointing out that we are actually within a medium as we are speaking and you are listening, more so. Namely events, whether they be called festivals or conferences. And you can probably tell if you're within a conference that is at least a little bit ludic. And I think FutureEverything is doing a pretty good job at sort of changing the shape of what a festival can be. This one is one where I was program chair in 2004. And the social experiment in this one was to keep about 1,000 people for 3 days on a ship in the Baltic Sea and see what happens in terms of how they start interacting with others. And people said that they've never become to know more new people within an event, so maybe it was successful. Can you move to the next one, please? This is a very non-ludic image. I wanted to bring it up because it's sort of anybody who's studied interaction design or software design has probably read Ben Schneiderman's book on interfaces. And it's kind of a reminiscence of sort of an engineering worldview and what interfaces could be about, where there's universe, intention, objects, and actions. And 15, 20 years ago, this was kind of standard. I think nowadays with Paul Durish talking about where the action is in terms of pervasive games or ubiquitous computing, is also the question, where is the action of play and where is the ludic situated? And I think these kinds of interface ideas were very much based on the screen, and screen is still relevant. But what I find interesting is sort of the distribution of interfaces into the worlds of embodied, physical, public sites. So then the kind of question of interface becomes far more interesting, but also at the same time much more complex. So in media arts, I think rather than seeking mimetic functionality, works often are interventions in styles of representation and information systems. And this has been sort of the case from very early on. But now, and also like these ludic modalities, they change. And there is sort of a value of newness when new technology is introduced and these ways of working kind of cross with popular cultures at large. Can you take the next one, please? And in this one, in the 60s, video activism, this is Ant Farm's van, working with video cameras, and it kind of presents an idea of networks and connectedness, and somehow there's a kind of echo of how that might have been very fresh and inviting at when it was introduced in the 60s with then current new technologies. Next one, please. The Yesman's work is definitely very ludic, but how do you talk about interface with their work? I mean, their work kind of started with hacking interfaces online, but what makes the work politically interesting is how they actually enact it in an embodied way with different publics. Next one, please. So I guess one question for me is that can Ludic be closely understood via things like parody, pastiche, drama, comedy, or tactility and embodiment, maybe in opposition, even though I don't believe in oppositions, but in opposition to mimetic, abstract, or systemic. I've been doing my own work, a lot of close readings and interviews with people working with located media, especially blast theory and proboscis. And one thing that I'm sort of coming out from is a kind of an idea that play can move from the screen to something I call object-oriented neighborhoods. And so when you do located play, surprisingly, they are not so much necessarily about a particular place, but they are much about social relations between people and different ways in which people relate with technology and different things within city spaces or game spaces. So kind of like Matthias was suggesting, this kind of boundary between what is virtual, what is physical. I wouldn't say real, because I think both are real, but just in a little different ways. So kind of these boundaries are in a very interesting way blurring, and like Stephen Benford, for example, has commented, the sort of role of ambiguity in design is becoming very central. So then for me also, a lot of things that are ludic, like have to do with, let's say, ambiguity and non-teleological endings. And maybe also like in the conference, these are good things to keep in mind. In Blast Theory is the Day of the Figurines. There is kind of like the media interface of SMS text messaging. That's how people interact with this work. But if you say that the interface to this work is text messaging, that is kind of far from how you need to understand a work where you choose a character like a figurine, it's given a name, and there's a game board, which is a sort of physical mock-up of a city, and these characters are being moved within this, and 1 hour in the city is like a day of your life. So here is a very interesting way in which sort of representing objects, yourself, engages in gameplay and forms a kind of a virtual idea of neighborhood. Next one, please. Then also like work by Natalie Jeremijenko and Proboscis in this robotic feral authoring. In one sense, what they do is quite simple. There are toy radio-controlled cars that are equipped with environmental sensors. So again, here is an interface that is built, but then the social process as it is taken to use with, for example, kids. Can you show the next image, please? And they perform with it. So the performance itself and what happens afterwards, working with the material, talking about it, then that actually becomes the work and the process. So interface is ludic, and the work couldn't exist without it. But it is kind of like more an invitation to engage, participate, to play in a particular way that enables multiple agencies. And I think this openness for multiple agencies is really crucial. Next one, please. This one is a project by Hehe, which was first set up in Helsinki during Pixelake Festival. Basically, this is a representation of consumption of energy, electricity, in one part of the city. And there's a laser tagging cloud, so they would invite the local people to come for coffee one night, and as they left their homes, their electricity consumption, and turn off the lights, of course, went down, and then this projection cloud actually would be increasing. And what happens here, I think, is an interesting, can you take the next one also too, please? Is an interesting way where the ludic also becomes part of sort of critical interaction design. So not everything that I think is, in terms of ludic interfaces, has to be games. This project by Proboscis called Snout was taking the sort of very old trope of carnival characters, and people acting with them and sensors in the city spaces, formed a sort of a ludic performance on the streets. And I guess what they ultimately are also about ludic storytelling. How we tell a different story with technology. And maybe finish with one image, which this is work that kind of links, I kind of call this new kind of digital folklore, or sort of folksy way of working with technology. This GPS drawing project is basically a couple of guys who made software for using GPS information and drawing by physically moving in the landscape. But also they invite people from different parts of the world to kind of send them traces of how they performed in their everyday life, or this was a whale hound, or this was... So it's just very random things. And I like the sort of absurdity of this kind of, how the sort of real collapses with some kind of a play and another representation of a kind of real space. And I like to just see the image when he was actually cycling for a long day in a city and how carefully he had to design to make this happen. Thanks.
Thank you. Margarete, do you want to control it yourself? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. Yeah, hello, and thank you for being here, and to Matthias especially, also to invite me to participate, because I'm here more or less as a private person, or let's say consultant or artist who is interested in the field since several years. I see other game artists in the audience, as Peter Swarovski, for example, who are working with ludic interfaces, but didn't call it yet. In the personal history of my work, there happened something at a certain moment, and that was the foundation of an association of artists and theoreticians and play practitioners, and that was called Ludic Society, and this was founded in 2005, and in 2006 we started to have the first club evenings of the Ludic Society at different festivals, and Matthias is also a honorary member and was participating at Transmediale and for example at Dutch Electronic Arts Festival, etc. And we were connecting it with plays, mainly with urban plays. And the motto always was, we sell play, not games. And being here as a private person, I'm allowed to speak as artist. And I think this is an extra point that we discussed. Moises said also art field. And what in the last 10 years of practice, many artists developed, and I myself developed, was to use methodologies of play and principles of play technologies to develop artworks that intervene in different fields of society. And therefore it's the title. It is not so much the question about the immaterial interface and the material interface, it is about the effects of play. So I would say the political agency, what you do when you have a funware application, when you give a scoring in a Facebook application, when you are logging into a wireless access point with your mobile phone, and these are the rules. So the rules are given by the technological material, the play affordances if you want, and then we play in everyday life. And to give a significant political commentary on these developments of technologies and social conditions, this is a job of arts, and I think of art research. So the third or the further point I want to add to something which we call ludic interfaces is the political agency and the commentary via the vehicle of art, and this is a sort of investigation and research as well. We are here in an English-speaking country. And I remember very well talking about Ludic with Andreas Brockmann in Transmediale, telling me, this is no English term. What do you mean with Ludic? And now I expect from everybody to know what ludic interfaces is. So, do you mean ludicrous? For example. Of course, it's a word play. And what you see here is also the Ludic Society magazine, which is a fanzine. I have a few here, just of the last two issues. It's always with, it costs 99 cents. So it is a Pulp Fiction prize as well. This means playing also with the physicality of Pulp Fiction magazines, and I'm willing to sell some, but it's 99 cents. And each of it has an ape, yeah? Go ape, about the conditions of the Ludic society, using the vehicles and also the Ludic wheel, playing with the technologies as aesthetic objects. Gives a commentary on the play affordances of the iPhone that everybody of you has, or the mobile phone or other smartphone. It is anthropomorphization that happens, and I would say that we have a history of anthropomorphization to associate with the objects of everyday life. And such an object as you see it here, this was the starting point in 2006 with Ludic objects, and that was further developed with Ludic Wheel, and I always collaborated in a group of people. So we are a real association, and I invited other people to develop it from the field of a technological expertise or of an aesthetic expertise or of performance expertise. Basically, I said already what I wanted to add, that out of the artistic practice, Ludic categories can be developed. For example, here you see the collaborators of this work, etc. But it is now the Ludic category 2 of conceived HMZ, which is developed also into Ludics as method. I don't call it Ludic. Stefan was talking about the Ludic. I differentiate it from the Ludics, because Ludics is a methodological approach developed out of the practice. Of course, referring to the classical game studies as it was done before with the theory remarks that we had, but based on a practice-based research. For example, another game with Ludic interfaces, I didn't call it, I called it Ludic Society Intervention, but transferring, Tapio mentioned the mobile patterns that you have in the city by tracing your walks. We were overriding a Google Maps with the help of a modified standard model game interface. And to make an aesthetic artificial object out of the standard model interface, this is the principle of lived HMC. The objects of desire, the technological objects, are the play objects that are telling us how to behave. So if Michael Liebe throws the booklet on the floor, he tells you go down on the floor and pick it up. So that's the rule of play. And also the technological object gives us a rule of play. Behave like whatever. And there was an effort to overdo it and to bring it to absurdity. I combined it also, for example, with fashion pieces a lot. The SEMA dress is a virtually transparent dress. If you take a photo of the pattern, this is an existing technology, and it's not about developing new technologies. But I made a dress, pattern dress out with it, and this is an urban camouflage dress. So theoretically, you could become invisible or naked, or you can become what you want. If taking a photo and decoding the barcode, the 2D barcode, then you see a section of the body where I have this pattern, not of mine or of the Vera, but of the Venus of Botticelli, to be a bit disappointed. You don't get the real thing, but... Category 1, perceived agency, and this is also an effort to override Google Maps. We were making a workshop also in Plymouth with Plymouth cars, not with bicycles, driving around Plymouth and putting with RFID judgment DACOM was the project, the traces of the individual players over Google Maps, and by cycling through each participant and player, a sort of movie started. So it was a film, and in the end everything would become filled up with traces. So you don't see the map anymore because you can annotate all the maps. This is another Ludic interface. The existing ones are Ludic interfaces. Google Maps. If everybody annotates with data overload, then you have a very black film, and then you have an avant-garde movie in the end. Everything is black and all the traces are over. You understand what I mean a bit? Playing with the absurdity of the reality. And that was also Pong Dress, a similar one, where you could, a self-built LED, self-soldered, and in the performance piece, the Vera goes into an arcade, into public space, and I have 2 game controllers, and you are allowed to play, and then the Pong pattern would go up and down, for example. And the players enjoy it, but they don't notice, for example, that they really have to stare then and as you wouldn't normally behave because you concentrate on the game. So it shows you that the funware which we have in interfaces often seduces you to do things that you are not really aware of. Exit, homebrew Wonder Toy. So we can exit with the homemade. It is custom made. The culture of modifications was mentioned before, so this is my last slide. And we can all have the electronic ether refreshers in the shape of little trees to solve our problems with the overflow of whatever. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Margarete. You're selling your 99 cents booklets, okay. I would like to have another 15 minutes for the panel and then really open the discussion up to all of you so that we can discuss these notions. Is there another chair? Because I don't want to... I thought I'd start with a big question to the panel. Do we live in a ludic society? Is our society where everybody says work is play and sex is play and the stock markets are just playful and the economy is just playful? Are we really in a ludic society, or is this an ideological notion?
How many hours? So, just short, I don't believe in society models anymore. I think it's an outdated discussion, and I think if I refer to Manfred Fassler, we are living in a communities of projects organized referential system, which is still working on limitations of society, but the model of society and the classical demographical things and democracy policy issues are changing. Maybe they are in the process of changing, so we cannot observe very well where they go, but I think it would be too easy to say it's a ludic society. So if we have to talk about this, then we have to talk before about this much bigger term society. And I'm not saying it's gone, but I'm saying it's tough transforming.
But today is the year, 2010 actually is the year of gamification. I forgot my search engine, so I don't know who actually proposed it, but 2010 is the official year of gamification. But around the world.
I'm sure European Union, yes. But society means association, Georg, so this is an affiliation, so it's no contradiction.
Yeah, no, I understand the sense.
Yeah, and I like to be outdated. That's the only way to survive in retro technologies.
Yeah, I would say that such questions are relevant in very narrow areas of practice and culturally specific as well, and should be looked at not only within sort of digital technologies but like an overarching idea of like society at large being ludic. I think a lot of people without a job would kind of have a different take on it, and so I think it's an impossible path to take. But first, when you said that, I thought you were asking, like, should we start a ludic society, like an association? I was like, interesting.
I mean, I would agree on the diagnosis to say that the society became more ludic, but not probably in the way of enjoying it, but that unconsciously we subjected ourselves to playful rules or even to harsh systems. So think of the credit point system in university, which is also a set of rules which tells you that at a certain point you passed. And this is also kind of set of rules in games. And we play that in our everyday lives, or same time the difference between work and non-work, and it's merging and whatever. So I think in a very maybe negative respect, society became very ludic, not only in the positive idea. So yeah. So that's why it's also important, as an intervention, to introduce ludic interfaces that are then not only invite you to play, but only stop you from doing your everyday play or your everyday games.
Okay. About society, no? I don't know. Sometimes I'm thinking about what it means, ludic society, you know? So society. Sorry. Because I feel like sometimes that is a rich concept, you know? It's not for poor people, you know? Because they have another kind of interesting concepts like survival, you know? Maybe it's like that, you know. I don't want to be inside of this concept because I don't have idea about that, you know, and I don't want to say, okay, this is I think it's the ludic society because I'm not fair about that. You know, I don't have any so much information about that. I don't want to say that, but I feel I feel that it's in the same time when we say ludic interface, we are speaking in another way than only. It's more, in my opinion, is more inoffensive, you know, than say another words. Maybe that together is a little bit like a gum, you know.
You started the discussion whether we live in ludic society. And I remember, I think it was Mackenzie work in his book, Gamer's Theory. He's suggesting that we live in a gaming society. How would you refer to it? Because at the same time you say play, not the game. So whether you have some comments to it.
Well, perhaps the credit point system is quite a good idea. If you take it as a game, then you try to reach in a master's project, for example, reach your 120 credit points as fast as possible, and you study as efficient as possible and collect the points everywhere you can collect them. That would be a game-like approach to the credit point system, to interpret it as not just a model of how to order studies. But a playful approach would be to also find hidden credit points in some seminars, for example. Like suddenly you do something without really knowing that it's leading you towards the goal of reaching the 120 credit points, but you're just experimenting with your ideas, you're reading some books here, you're trying out another project there. So it's the difference between game approach and play approach is one in the degree of goal-drivenness. So if you stick to the rules of the game in order to reach the goal, which is declined by somebody else, then you're playing the game or behaving towards the game. But if you sort of play around, fool around, experiment with different systems, then it would be more playful. So that's why I said before, it's also an attitude, ludic. Yeah.
Steve?
Hi, Steve Manthorpe with the Artemelt Group. I just wanted to sort of borrow a comment, really. In his rant at South by Southwest in 2009, Bruce Sterling was talking about the possibility of developing games that would make sort of tedious process-based work into something playful. He suggested, the example he gave, which was slightly alarming, was inspecting cancer screening, high-resolution photographs for abnormal cells, and he suggested converting it into a shoot-'em-up. I'm not entirely convinced that I want my health to be determined by someone playing a shoot-'em-up, particularly if there are any cheats. But I just wondered if people could see the potential of gaming interfaces to make that kind of work at least a little bit more exciting for the poor buggers who do it.
I guess a ghastly example of where a particular line of work is being performed in game environments, that is war. So, and that department is already done. I guess one thing about the kind of borderline between game or play and his like the angles from art or interaction design or strictly game design. What I think is interesting about ludic interfaces is this kind of possibility to stretch game studies as well as this notion of what is the object of study. So I think the ambiguity of it is productive in a sense. I don't know, this is not really an answer to your question and Mackenzie Work's notion, but a gamer or game seems to be much more sort of narrow and focused and sort of less ambiguous a term.
I also think that this idea that Bruce Sterling put forward in a provocative way, it is really something that we encounter in everyday life quite often at the moment, that we think we are playing a little entertainment thing on the computer in between, and actually we are asked questions where we work as providing someone with information about our consumer attitude and other things. Or if we play a computer game where we think we enjoy a game of football, and then there's so much advertisement around the arena that we are actually in a process of working in a consumer producer. Yeah.
May I ask also something? May I also ask, because I find the notion interesting of the interface that you were suggesting with the Ludic interface, which of course is something different than an arts project where as provocative statement it is said, we shall play not games. Here the question of the interface is, what do you think, what do you have in mind? Maybe we should talk about, this is also an educational program, that you want to educate the people to develop new forms of vehicles, of interfaces. I think the physical interface is an important aspect here, or not?
There is a development going on in regard to ludic interfaces by the mainstream companies, by the big companies like Sony and Nintendo and so forth. So that is not something that we need to replicate at the university. I think at the university it is much more interesting to find out how one can subvertive in a technological setup where a certain technology presupposes that a certain way of using the technology seems to be set in stone, and by introducing new interfaces one can maybe create other possibilities of how people interact with machines or humans interact with each other.
Yeah, I think as well it's a very important part to kind of prototype interfaces. This doesn't mean to bring it into production or a serial kind of way, but for example at the interface culture we kind of talk to our students and try to bring them in a position that they use existing interfaces, existing technologies to transform them in a way under the idea of an artistic project, which is always a very good example because the parameters are not very fixed, so you can always change or kind of experiment with the things. And I guess this is like we have seen the Ludic Society pieces as well, they force as well a very critical question of things like shutting off the environment around of you, which is like the electro smog or something like this. So it is, I think the question is as well very important, which opportunities have an artistic developer or artistic scientific developer to kind of react on the environment which is developed by the industries. Sure, exactly. I think this what I pointed out before is we really try to bring our students to a point where they kind of use all the stuff what's around, not just of tell, okay, we are artists, we don't want to have something to do with kind of Microsoft development. So maybe there is an opportunity to hack it, to use it in a different way, to overcome a limitation, to get in a new perspective, and by this means invent something.
Yeah, I think like the tinkering, the tinkering practice in electronics and DIY, that's kind of like, that is sort of a ludic practice, ludic design. I think, though, two words that I don't find mixed with ludic too often is the word critical and politics. So one of those things that I'm curious to ask you is that how do you find these realms to mix? What are the critical or political potentials of the word ludic when it has to do with interfaces? Anyway.
So finally I have opportunity to show this. Thank you for this. It's the work of Übermorgen, for example, gives a very good example how you can, in a playful way, deal with, let's say, critical and as well, maybe as well as a system where art is not expected at all, just by creating, how they name it, originals, like forge originals, and somehow play with the system in the manner of machine self-reproduction, self-representation, and as well with projects like Google Will Eat Itself, which is something like a very kind of top-up idea, but because it will never happen, but alone the machine that they build it, and somehow there is the opportunity to buy shares, and then in the end, I'm not sure if everybody knows the work, but I'm referring to Google Will Eat Itself, where the Übermorgen will buy Google, and in the end then they will destroy Google, but it will take a couple of million years to buy all the shares by clicking ads on Übermorgen sites. So it is a very kind of closed circuit installation. In a way, it's very ludic, it's very kind of playful how to deal with it, and they have a very cool attitude as well, how they kind of represent their kind of things, because they are not like, here we are, and we tell you how bad the world is. They are more like, yeah, we're part of it. I take drugs, all right, I cannot do anything against it. So I think this is as well a kind of attitude which has to be developed under creative people, that it's not just making interfaces or making systems to play around. I think it can be implemented everywhere. And it's just a question of how you kind of format your own ideas.
Also, sorry, does anybody speak German here? Yeah. What?
Japanese.
Japanese. No, but the word frech. What's that in English? Frech. Frank. No. Frank is a German name, actually.
It's kind of provocative, anti-authoritarian.
Like a child who teasing. Yeah, that's sort of it. A child that continuously teases adults. So that's perhaps also one notion of the ludic approach to working or to criticizing, is not to fingers up approach to it, but teasing the people and by doing the artistic practices. But actually, as part of this consortium, do not totally agree that we have to have a social critical approach when we say ludic. It's sometimes also enough to just make something enjoyable, and that alone may be also, if you want to have it provocative. So, yeah. Saucy sounds good.
I like so.
What do you mean?
Perky, I think I heard perky once before. Is it? What about you? Is ludic supposed to be critical, or is it per se critical if you do a ludic design? Or is there any opinion in this audience?
It was more that kind of, do you not engage critical faculties in kind of engaging with ludic interfaces? Well, I'm not sure if I'm understanding of how you're talking about critical or being critical, but if I'm thinking of ludic being play and playing, in playing, are you not critical in how you approach what you're doing? You are evaluative and perhaps objective, as well as subjective. I mean, I say you, I, we. So surely, ludic is critical simply in the act of playing. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. It doesn't look like I am, but...
Is that your opinion, or is that a question?
That would be my response to your question, which was, is ludic critical?
So we also already have ludic positivism, which is good.
I could mention one more piece by Übermorgen, which they recently published. As an example to discuss of whether this is critical or not, they commented on the disaster which happened in the Mexican Gulf by saying they published the best oil painting of the 21st century, and that was derived biggest landart piece as well, as from this disaster where the oil really makes a gigantic painting in the Gulf, and many people were super angry with them. They said, well, you cannot make fun with such economic disasters or political disasters. And Übermorgen's stance is almost like a jester or a clown to say, well, by laughing about it, we criticize it as well. But that can be discussed, I think. For some people, maybe it is a bit too tough or too...
If we talk now in general, what it means to be critical, what does it have to do with now Ludus, Ludic, or anything? I mean, this is a very, very general discourse, of course. And I liked very much, Stefan, were introducing, for example, having the sources of the term, yeah, like game and play as differentiation. At least, I mean, it makes sense. If we use a term, then we want to focus on something. And if there is Ludus at least contained in this term within an interface, I am grateful for this focus, because then we know we have a specific field, and there we can have certain realms between affirmative play, between to a critical, but to a theoretical, and the physical attitude and the performance attitude. Maybe these are aspects, but at least Ludus is Paideia, and Ludus from the Latin sources. It has both elements: the rule-driven game, which is important because this is a part of our realities, of our living realities, social realities, but especially technological realities. And I think this is an advantage, that we start from this ludus, which is the rule-driven, and also the open approach, where we say playful behavior is everywhere, not necessarily in the game. But this is also well known since developmental psychology and child psychology and etc. Of course. So it is a combination of both aspects that is a good starting point for exactly this discourse to be discussed. And I just wanted to add, I find it interesting that we have a focus here and the starting point. And where it goes, okay. So openness is fine, but somehow, you know, I like the focal starting point.
I like very much that, I mean, both of you addressed the problem that shouldn't we better call it the Paidic and not the Ludic? But I think it's exactly the right word, because it's exactly playing with the game structures and transformation of game structures. So it's working actually on the hard and software basis, or on the basis of everyday play. So this is the focus. I mean, it's got to do with the performativity or the performance. So actually we need play, but it's actually the design of playable structures. So, and I think this is a very good focus for starting off with a program, as well as say a new field of research and artistic practice. So.
Are there any more questions or comments from the audience? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Victoria. I'm also from the Artemelt gang. My question is quite simple, actually, and it was just how sort of new is this form that you're talking about? I mean, because you did give some examples of work that's sort of, 10, 20 years old, I don't know. And I just wondered how kind of innovative it is, because I'm aware of it and I work in performance, but from kind of a research perspective, yeah, how innovative and new is it as a form, I suppose? Yeah, is it something of the now? Is it something really present and something that...
It's not. Jörg says it's not new.
No, that's what I'm asking. I mean, how new is it, I suppose, and why is it so relevant now?
Why it is relevant now?
Okay, that's another question.
I mean, what I could say is that the question about games and play always arise in times of crisis. So you had this Heusinger who's talking about play in the end of the 1930s, and then you had Caillois at around the 60s when computers the first time came up, not in the personal sector, but in the cybernetic, or in the official sector, or in the Cold War phases. And you have it now at the, let's say, at the totality of the cyberspace, as it was called some years ago. And so what we are now finding is probably a new crisis. I don't know if it's a financial crisis or environmental crisis or a bigger crisis or whatever. So every time humanity, or at least the Western world, faces a crisis, then we focus on games or on play, which somehow also seems to be some kind of savior, or let's say a gate or a way to get to the human per se. And this is a very old idea from the 18th century, or by Friedrich Schiller, who be one of the first aesthetics, saying that the proof for human beings to be human beings is that they are able to play. So it's not work, and it's not hunting or whatever, but it's being able to play and to do something that doesn't make sense or that doesn't lead to something. So this is a proof for the existence of being human. So.
I think as well, I heard the word innovation in it, and I think Margarete coined the word anthropomorphization. Was it right? Anthropomorphization. Anthropological, like we said, that I think it's a kind of very old idea to kind of reconfigure, however it is a cultural overcome, it is a crisis, or it is a kind of change of technological artifacts, or religion, whatever. And I think it is something which is very close to the human self-organization in groups or societies, that they have to combine things, and then they're creating something like a game-like or an interface-like environment around it to combine it. But I think this would go now too far to really go to the steps. But I think there are anthropologists, which I coined already, Manfred Fassler, he has this idea of co-evolutionary processes, while not only humankind self-organization as well, the artifact relationship and the environment relationship is a kind of infogenetic move. So it's not only more we have the bioentity and there is the kind of abstract environment. We have something which information is a very kind of relational term, a theoretic boundingness, which is somehow also combining this playful method in a very, very much deeper level of referentialization of human and environment relationship.
Like, can androids play electronic games? But I wanted to kind of point out a very concrete reason why this is quite current topic. For example, within social media, how do you study, for example, phenomena where people throw sheeps or philosophers at each other? It's like not exactly a game, but there are certain levels of play that keep changing and shifting. So particularly within sort of research of social media, for example, different modalities of Ludic, I think, are relevant.
Just to add, it's just also perhaps similar to how genres work. So it's not about being really the first to do it, but we have the feeling that the time's ripe. There's a critical mass of ludic approaches to interfaces has been established, especially by artists, but also take the iPhone, iPad just launched, or whatever, Farmville. It's just a critical mass of ludic objects you can find everywhere, ludic artifacts, ludic approaches, ludic mentalities. So it's not really the first, but it's the first to try to find a concrete form and a set of vocabulary on which we can work, and try to establish a cause which actually doesn't exist in this form.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I think we are completely serious and not at all ludic any longer, so we maybe should rather finish with these discussions. But I would like to invite you all to stay in touch with us via ludicinterfaces.com, where we will present research and also the development steps of this program development. And I would very much like to thank the panel members for joining this discussion and the audience for their good questions. Thank you very much.